Let's welcome Catherine Chapman and Peter Price.
Hello.
Hello.
Yep, so welcome everybody. My name's Catherine Chapman. I work with BBC Learning English and we're joined today by my colleague Peter Price.
Hello.
And we are going to talk today about how we created videos for the Wider World Pearson series that are engaging and motivating for teenagers. So, moving to our first slide. Basically, what I'm going to do today is talk about, firstly, the brief that we were given by Pearson Education, and I'll be mentioning the quantity and content and the level of Vox Pop videos. Then I'll move on to describe some of the English language teaching issue challenges and solutions we encountered while shooting and editing the videos. Then I'll hand over to Pete, who's going to talk about the practical challenges and solutions of actually filming the Voxes. We're going to play examples of video Vox Pops throughout the presentation, and we will end by showing you a couple of our favourite contributors. So, let's start with an example video. This one's about 2 minutes long, and it's aimed at the level 1 learners. It's a very low level 1 Vox Pop. So it lasts about 2 minutes, and we'll play it for you now.
How do you get to school or work?
Well, I do either catch the tube to get to work, or I cycle. Usually I cycle, but it depends on weather.
Well, I don't actually work, but I would get a train or a drive.
I get the tube or the train or the bus.
Well, every day I come into work on the train, so the overground train, and then I get the tube.
I get to work by train every day.
I get to work on the tube.
I take the tube also.
I skateboard if I'm feeling active. If I'm feeling lazy, I'll take the tube.
So that is just one of 72 videos that we created for the Wider World series, and a lovely selection of people there talking about different ways of getting to work or school. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more now about the aim and the scope of the Vox Pops. There were 4 different levels. Each level has 18 videos. Each video lasts between 1 and 3 minutes. Each video has between 2 and 6 speakers, and each video is on a different topic, which are all designed to match the Wider World syllabus. And each video, the speakers are using examples of specific language points, which are either vocabulary or grammar, which are related to those topics. So we actually ended up talking to well over 100 people. It took hours and hours of film to edit down to the final videos, and it took about 3 days to film each level. So we had 12 days on the streets of London. The topics themselves was a really wide range, and the topics were designed to elicit specific language points, either vocabulary or grammar, and they were on very universal subjects. So we had things like, what's your favourite sport? How do you get to school? What kind of music do you listen to? What type of clothes do you wear? What bad habits do you have? All things that most people can relate to, and in particular, the topics were chosen for their appeal to teenage learners. And that was really important for us. So other ways that we were able to appeal to the teenage learners were not just through the topics, but also the range of speakers. So we have people from all over the world. We're very lucky to be in London, that we've got people from many, many different nationalities. We had all different ages of people. We chose them in particular for their character, their personalities, the willingness to talk about themselves and their lives, to engage with us. And we had a big mixture of male and female as well. We were in London. It's an international city. It's got lots of fabulous locations. It's full of buses and international people, hustle and bustle, the sounds and smells of, well, the sounds of London, I should say. People say a bit more about this, but we're very lucky to have this fantastic setting to do these videos, which is massively appealing. We also paid great attention to the look and the feel of the video to give it a nice, light and young touch. So we kept everything very informal. We didn't script stuff. We just said, we asked people the questions and let them speak naturally. We didn't edit heavily. We just curated what people said to fit what we were looking for. So the clips are all short. They're not intense. They're not scripted. They're very authentic. We had people looking straight down the camera. It's something that doesn't come naturally to everybody, but we have found a great range of people who are very happy to work with us. And we often had pairs of speakers, people who were friends or family members, talking together and looking straight down the camera. So all of those things gave it a really nice kind of fun, young vibe that we were very pleased with. So I'm going to show you now another example video. Again, it's about 2 minutes long. This is actually the top end of the range. So the first one we saw was level 1. This one's level 4, and you'll see some of the things I've just been talking about as we play it.
In what kind of situations do you find communicating difficult?
I would find communicating difficult at a party where there are lots of people.
Find communicating difficult when I'm in a large, crowded place and it's quite loud, because I really enjoy hearing the person and starting a conversation where you can feel like you make a connection.
Probably the toughest situations here in London is when you find people that are not English and they come from different countries and they have different accents, and that can sometimes be a bit tough to understand what they're saying and try to reply.
Yes, this is why it's important to keep learning and to make yourself better, to really be able to speak with the other people.
Trying to communicate to a drunk person is the worst. They are sloppy and ridiculous, and I don't know how to communicate with them.
I don't know exact answer to this, but especially when I'm doing my coaching, like football coaching. So the thing that I find really difficult is trying to explain to players or group of students, basically if they don't understand English, so it's a bit complicated. So that's when you have to use hand gestures and movements, and it's a bit difficult at that time. So yeah, I would say probably the worst, not worst, but very difficult to explain to them.
At work, when you have a conflict with your colleagues, and especially you are the team leader, you find it very difficult to communicate.
Situations where you have an interview during your work, because you will be like a bit nervous, like all these killer questions asking at you. So yeah, this interview. So like basically we have to prepare for the interview to make sure we have like confidence and know what we want to present.
So a nice range of speakers there. I'm now going to talk a little bit about some of the English language teaching issues and solutions that we had to deal with while we were filming. So first of all, talking about the complexity of language. So whilst these videos were simply edited, we didn't do heavy editing, there were times where we had to either retake the vox pops or just reject some of the footage, especially at lower levels. Because people sometimes used, they either spoke very fast or they used target structures, which were high-level structures, which were too complex for the learners. So sometimes they'd say something that we weren't actually asking them to say in terms of the target language. They might say, instead of saying that is, they would say something like that would be. And we could ask them, can you say that again? But please don't say that would be, say that is. But sometimes people just couldn't stop themselves. And they use natural language, which isn't always what's in the grammar book. So occasionally we had to reject stuff because they were sort of speaking the way that we wanted them to. Pronunciation-wise, we were fine with natural pronunciation as long as it was understandable to a general learner. That was our benchmark. Whether they were native speakers, non-native speakers, whether they spoke British English or American English or Indian English or Australian English, understandable was great. There was one or two people who had quite idiosyncratic pronunciation that we weren't able to put into the final videos. We also found, in terms of appropriacy. We had to bear in mind that whilst having a sense of humour is fine, sometimes they went a little bit adult with the humour so that wouldn't be quite right for the teenage learner. So a couple of times they said stuff that we thought we're not quite comfortable with putting that in the video. So what I'm going to do now is play a short clip of some of the stuff that you won't see in the final video, but it's examples of all the kind of things that we had to deal with. So this lot is for your eyes only, and it's a couple of times when things didn't go quite according to plan.
I don't normally consume that much in terms of magazines. I don't really buy that many. In terms of newspapers, it would normally be sort of, I forgot the actual, is it tabloid? Rather than broadsheet, yeah. So, yeah, tabloid rather than broadsheet, like the Sun or like the Metro, stuff like that.
What did you do there? Would you recommend it?
뭘 추천하느냐? 무슨 소리야? 네가 해석을 해줘야지. 해석을 해줘.
Okay, it's all right. That's no problem. No problem. No problem. Let's do a different one. Okay, so can you tell us, question 815, tell us about a famous artist.
Maybe Namjoon Baek. Because his art is different from the other artists.
So how often do you visit Google then?
At least 3 times a day.
It's basically when you do a meal or something.
Just, yeah. If I need the toilet, do I go? Do I not go?
I'm like, how can I make decisions?
Do I fold or scrunch the paper? Do I stand or sit when I need to eat? It's all sorts.
So why do you like Google most of all?
Because then I don't have to think for myself. It does it all for me.
It's a simple creature.
Yeah, big time.
That's why we get on.
So I often take part in sports. I would often play soccer. Sometimes I would, say, do cycling. I would never actually play chess. I would also never go to the pub, which is strange as I am Irish.
Can you do it again, but this time without the wood?
I often cycle. I often play soccer. Sometimes I cycle. I would never go to the pub, which is strange as I am an Irish person. Did I say wood, did I? Oh my God, no way! Oh God, my joke is dying a slow death now because I've said it 3 times. I often play soccer and I often go cycling. I would never go to the pub, which is strange. Oh no, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Someone write down not wood and I will if I say wood again, catch just kick me in the shin, will you? Okay. I often play soccer. I often go cycling. I sometimes go cycling. I never go to the pub, which is strange as I am an Irish person.
Lovely, Joe. We'll edit it out.
That's a lovely Seamus. He was absolutely fantastic. And we did use what he said in the end, just without the wood. So I'm going to hand over to Pete now, who's going to tell us something about the production considerations while we filmed these lovely vox pops.
Thank you, Catherine. Hello, everyone. I'm Pete. I worked for the BBC for nearly 10 years, and then I set up my own company called PPM. And I've got a long association with working with BBC Learning English. I've also worked with lots of the language services at the BBC. We broadcast in about 28 different languages. And one of the skills that I learned when I was directing people in front of a camera in all these different languages is how to make people feel relaxed and confident when they're in this strange situation of having to speak into a camera. So more of that in a moment, but that came in very useful in this project. So I'm going to take you through some of the production considerations, and we're going to start with the look. Part of the brief for this project was to reflect London visually, which is great fun, because normally when we're making domestic BBC content for UK audiences, we actually try and disguise the fact that we're shooting in London so much. So this project gave me a great opportunity to run around the streets of London and make sure that we got lots of classic tourist views, things like Union flags, umbrellas, underground signs, famous streets and leafy streets as well. And I think you'll agree from this grid of shots that we got on the series that London actually is a very green city, and it's one of the reasons I really like it. So I'm glad that we reflected that. So the next consideration when we were producing this series was about permissions, and it's sort of related to the last point. filming in London isn't as easy as it looks, and it's easier than many places in the world that I've been, but because you don't generally need permission to film on the streets of London. But if you want the iconic locations, often they're very tightly controlled. So that rules out shooting anywhere near Houses of Parliament or Big Ben or near underground stations, that sort of thing. So we have to think very creatively about where we can stand, where we're allowed to stand without permission, but also gives us nice backgrounds, so we're making sure we don't break any rules whilst getting good shots. This picture here, for example, is one from Leicester Square. So on to the technical considerations. Well, I shot on a Sony FS7 camera, and here's me holding it with Graham, our soundman. And I used natural light wherever possible to make good use of the light that we had available. We used a reflector, so if the sun was directly behind the person who's speaking, then we can use a reflector to reflect some of that sunlight back onto their face and into their eyes so we can see them. We also, sorry, let me find my place. We shot tens of hours of footage, and I edited it all together on some software called Adobe Premiere. And here is my cat called Gwen giving me another pair of eyes across this particular edit. I did some color correction to get the best out of every shot and to make sure the whole series looks stylized and the same. But we'll talk about that more in a moment. And also we shot introductory pieces to camera that you see in the series, like this one. And it was very important for us on this project to make the presenters appear like they're actually inside the BBC. So we shot in Broadcasting House, and this is Neil overlooking the BBC newsroom, which I think is a great shot. And we also used this studio, which if you've watched TV in the UK, the BBC in the UK, then you might have seen this show. It's actually the one show which goes out every day, and they very kindly lent us the use of their studio to get this introductory shot, which I really love because it allowed us to show off the camera and make it look give it a sort of backstage feel, like you're really inside the BBC. So the next consideration was finding the right people, and it's important to think about where you film so that you get the right sort of people walking past you who are willing to stop and talk to us. Now, Londoners going about their daily business want absolutely nothing to do with film crews on the street. I know that because I am a Londoner and I hate them, so I'll never stop for them. So the trick is to be in areas filled with people who've got time to stop and chat. And we found that worked particularly well in quieter streets, in back streets near sandwich shops, where people are just popping out to get a sandwich in their lunch hour and that sort of thing. We also found places like Leicester Square was particularly good for these because it looks great, it's iconically London, and it's full of people just milling about, enjoying their day, perhaps on holiday, and so they're willing to stop and chat for a few minutes. To stop people as they're walking past, we found that wearing our BBC lanyard helped because it had the BBC logo on it. But your first question that you ask someone walking past is absolutely crucial, and everybody on the crew used a different technique. Mine was to ask people, as my first question, I'd ask them if English was their first language, and normally that got them intrigued about the project and what we were doing. So the next consideration is sound, and sound is of utmost importance in this project because obviously our learners need to be able to hear clearly what's being said. So we used a sound recordist on all our shoots, and they used a very directional microphone and boom, which means that you can pinpoint the voice over the top of surrounding noise. And it's great because we just can't compete sometimes with all the sounds that we hear in London. We have everything. We have police and ambulance sirens, we have car horns, car alarms, people just shouting at their friends, buskers, street sweepers, dustbin lorries, you name it. We had to stand occasionally when these things passed, we had to stand and wait for the noise just to go away. Now I'm going to show you some video here which has no sound, ironically, but this is Catherine and Agatha from Pearson outside Broadcasting House, and we're just discussing the next shot. But what it shows you is Cassandra wielding the very directional microphone on the end of her long boom, and she's recording the sound by putting that microphone directly above the person who's speaking. And the sound is recorded on this very high quality recorder, which is around over her shoulder. We also, this is also showing you how we shot quite often very near busy roads. So we had, having the iconic London bus in the background is brilliant, but they do make a lot of noise when they go past. We have to be very careful with that. And just a quick wave there from Graham, who, alongside Cassandra, was our sound recordist on a few days. So sound is one thing that we can't control. Another is the weather. And filming in the rain, it does rain in London, filming in the rain often looks very miserable on screen, and everybody ends up feeling miserable in the crew, although we were fairly lucky actually on this shoot. We didn't have to stop very many times, but I quite like it because we get to stop and have a cup of tea. The weather also dictates what people wear, so we had to be quite careful during this series to make sure that we didn't have everyone wearing heavy coats, and we had a good range of people wearing coats and some people in t-shirts. So it doesn't matter when you watch the series in the year, it's people look normal, if you like, and there's a good range of clothing. So just to prove that we did have some wet weather, here's some video that I shot during a tea break when we just couldn't go out because it was just too heavy. Yeah, it does happen in London, unfortunately. Here is Finn, another one of our producers, with Graham the soundman, and we've just stopped this woman in the street who's agreed to talk to us, and here she is. So you might recognise this shot if you've watched the series. And what I can show you in this shot is this is the final shot as it appears in the series, but here it is as we shot it. So this is what the camera saw, and this is after I've done some colour correction on it. That's what I was talking about earlier, where we try and give the series a brighter look, which is particularly important in this shot, for example, where hopefully it disguises some of the bad weather, but also just balances all the shots together, so that we cut these together in a different order each time in each program, and so it doesn't matter which order we cut them into, everyone looks roughly the same brightness and the same, it looks like we've shot them all on the same day, essentially. So colour correcting is a really important part of the process, and it's often the thing that we do right at the end once we've decided on the, the rest of the editing. Now on to the next consideration, and that is performing. So once we've arranged, once we've convinced someone to stop and talk to us, often that is the hardest part of the process. The next hardest is convincing them to look down the lens and to answer Catherine's questions without looking at Catherine, but to look into the camera at the same time. They also have to keep looking down the lens after they've finished speaking, which is just really uncomfortable if you're not used to it. It's really unnatural, and even the most outgoing of people can crumble when we ask them to stare into the lens of a camera. It's also an unnerving and odd experience when I've tried it. Having said this, some people are naturals, like this guy who was in London, it turns out, for an audition to get into acting school. And one thing that I noticed is that North Americans on the whole are really good at talking to camera very confidently, perhaps because they've grown up by doing show and tell in school. And I also think this style of filming is becoming easier for younger people because they're developing the confidence of looking into the camera lens, because they're taking selfies all the time. And
okay, question 5 then. Do your family members or pets
now here's some video which illustrates
several.
this,
My husband snores.
where
Dogs snore.
the woman on the right of screen here, she's answering the question into the camera, but then just afterwards she can't help but look to Catherine, who's off to the right-hand side of the screen here. Whereas her daughter, who's on the left, who's a bit younger, just doesn't break her stare with the lens. So she's totally knows what she's doing and very happy to look into the camera.
Exercise in my free time. I sometimes clean my house in my free time. I never go
so
to
difficult.
a football match in
It's
my
such a
free
strange thing to be asked to do.
I often walk my dogs in my free time.
When we ask people to do it. So to sum up, this is a really brilliant project to be involved with, and I absolutely loved the days that we spent on the streets of London, stopping people and asking them to answer our questions, and I hope that you enjoy the result as well. And I hope that next time you see some Vox Pops on TV, you see them on news programmes all the time, and they pop up all over the place, but actually, even though they look like the simplest thing, they are actually one of the most complex and most difficult and time-consuming things that you can make in TV. So hopefully this gives you some insight into some of the considerations. Catherine?
Yes, thank you. Yes, we just to reiterate what Pete said, we had a fantastic time making these Vox Pops. We met some amazing people, and we really hope that your students enjoy working with these videos as much as we enjoyed making them. So we're going to just finish up with it. Although everyone was fabulous, there was a couple of standout videos for both of us. So we're going to now hear from Rudy from Sri Lanka and Salim from Benin, who made a very lasting impression on me. And we'll also hear from Carol, who...
Well, Carol, I picked out Carol because I asked her to stop in the street, and I thought there was no hope at all. She was very determined. She was going about her business, and I thought there was no hope she'd stop and speak to us. And actually, I really liked her response.
So, without further ado, we'll finish on Rudy and Salim and Carol talking about extreme sports.
Have you ever tried an extreme sport?
Have you done any extreme sports?
I tried rugby.
I don't think rugby counts as an extreme sport. It's just like a team sport.
Oh, skateboarding.
I don't think that counts as a extreme sport.
Snowboarding.
Oh yeah, maybe. Snowboarding is quite extreme. You could die. Bungee jumping. I've done bungee jumping. That was quite fun. It doesn't really count as bungee jumping because there was no rope attached to my feet. I just fell off. It was like off a building. Actually broke my ankle after that. So it doesn't really count as bungee jumping, but I just fell off a building. So yeah. Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. Motorbike just went crazy and broke my nose and so many stuff. Yeah. If it's an extreme sport, actually.
And not exactly an extreme sport, but I did try hang gliding on holiday once. It was quite exciting.
Bless, that's lovely, Carol, there. So that's it from us, and we'll be very happy to take any questions.
Okay, we have some questions here.
Great.
Carmela was asking, how have the videos been integrated into the book units, and if there are any worksheets to work with the videos?
That would be one for Pearson. I believe that I think that each unit of the book, the video comes towards the end of each unit. And the idea is that the content of the video contains language that has been presented and practiced through the unit. So there will be practice materials in the books to prepare for the videos. I am afraid it would be over to Pearson to explain, or as Barry's saying, have a look at the website to find out some more about how to use the videos in class. But
right. We can send Carmela some links. Don't worry. And super. I have another question from Eftimios that wants to know what format did you use to save the videos in?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I can tell you that we shot it in high definition and in widescreen as well. And then I can't remember the format we originally shot it on, but it depends where you're watching it, actually. So depending on the means that you're watching it, if you're on a DVD, it'll be quite high quality. H.264 is the name of the codec that we use to compress the images and the video. If you're watching online or if it's streamed, then it'll be slightly more compressed and there'll be less data in it. But yeah, I hope that answers the question. It's high definition and H.264.
I think also just to say that the quality that you're seeing on this webinar doesn't represent the quality of the DVD. Because we're streaming internationally, you're going to lose some quality in this experience, but from the DVD, you'll get a very, very high quality video.
Yeah, sure. Natalia here has another question. She's asking, can I find these videos in YouTube?
I believe they're at the moment available by DVD. Perhaps the Pearson people can say a little bit more about how to access the videos.
Okay. And another question from Olga. She wants to know what levels do these BBC videos have?
So they're in 4 levels. Each level corresponds to the wider world, starting at quite a low level, which was the first one we played, which would be sort of pre-intermediate, and they go up to kind of upper intermediate level. So 4 levels of videos.
Okay, Emmanuel is asking what is the Pearson book that is related to these videos. It's Wider World, Emmanuel. We are going to send you a link to give you more information about this. And I have one more question. They are asking if you only work with videos for adults and teens, or you also have videos for kids.
BBC Learning English in particular. Pearson again, I think Pearson from the BBC Learning English side, we generally work for young adults and adults. Pearson, I believe, have a very wide range of materials for all ages.
Okay, thank you, Catherine, and thank you, Peter.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Really a pleasure. For all of you who are there on the other side, remember we are going to send you a certificate and the recording of this webinar. And you can join us tomorrow at 9 a.m. with another webinar by Dr. Ken Beattie, Interactivity. And again on Thursday and Friday at 5:30 p.m. we have 2 more seminars with Assessment for Learning and Bridging the Authenticity Gap with Philip Warwick. So you are all invited. Thanks for being here. See you next time.